Wow, you're gonna waive every TIA. Just give it to the state.
I like the little criteria and then
It's useful. It's useful.
things
Right. Done it twice.
are tight.
If we think we need it, we can always keep it, and if we don't, we can hit the button.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order. Thank you all for joining us this evening, those of you in the room and those of you watching online. If you would please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. If you'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started and move on to staff questions, I would just ask that everyone make sure that their phones are on vibrate. Thank you. I would open it up for the board for any staff questions. Commissioner Phillips.
I was wondering if anybody here would like to talk about Gilead Road and what the heck's going on there? Any takers?
The street trees and all.
Yes, sir.
On the street trees. I think we got a little map here that may help make it a little more visible for the public, et cetera.
Yes, we briefly put together this little map. This is a cut from the plan sheet for the Gilead Road I-77 interchange project. So 77 would just be off the right side of the page. This is Reese Boulevard, just to kind of orient you. This will be west over here and east on this side. Real quickly, we kind of highlighted in red the area once were, and you can see that most of the ones on the Reese Boulevard approach adjacent to the hospital, those are actually going to be in what will be a future turn lane, so obviously they had to go. These along this side would be on the south side of Gilead Road. You see most of the widening for Gilead Road is to the south, so those trees also will be in future lanes. And on the north side, as you get off of I-77, if you're southbound, you see these red dots also are in travel lane, so they obviously would need to go. These, it would appear, didn't necessarily have to go. However, the project delivers new curb and gutter and new sidewalk, and the grade changes. So that's the reason those trees had to go, because due to the grade change, this new stormwater infrastructure, curb and gutter and sidewalk, those trees would have been in conflict. So that's kind of a snapshot. Be happy to address any more point specific if I need to.
Just a quick question, Mr. Fox. So there are cones out to the west of Reese, but those trees are not coming out, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
We believe at this point that the farthest trees will be right at the Reese intersection.
Any other questions? Commissioner Phillips?
And just to reiterate, who is behind this project?
This is delivered by North Carolina Department of Transportation.
Does the town of Huntersville have any say over this project?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, we will move into the public comments, requests for presentations. First up is 6A on our agenda, Rural Hill and the Loch Norman Games. Ms. Bustamante, how are you this evening?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
I have with me Mariah Evans and Helen Cathy, and we are representing the Loch Norman Highland Games. First of all, we wanted to just remind everyone that they are coming up. We've had to take a 2-year hiatus for COVID, but we are back on for April 9th and 10th. And secondly, we just wanted to emphasize, I don't think a lot of people realize, so a lot of people are familiar with Grandfather Mountain Highland Games up in the mountains. They've been going on for over 50 years. They're very prestigious. I've been there several times. It's a very nice games. But one thing I can say for the Loch Norman Highland Games, we have our 3 sanctioned events, which are officially sanctioned by the big governing bodies, mostly from Scotland or national governing bodies. Of those 3 sanctioned events, we have a Grand Championship Highland Dance competition, so that is a nationally ranked competition. We have the Jimmy McIntosh Piabrock Challenge, which is a professional piping competition that is a nationally recognized piping competition. And then our athletes, those guys that get out there and they throw around the big telephone poles or the hammers or the sheaves, we have almost every year at least world record attempts, if not world records, actually set for our games. So right here in Huntersville, we have Highland Games that have some of the most recognized competitions in the country. So I feel like that's something that we bring to Huntersville that it's important for our citizens to know.
Thank you very much.
Anything you want to add?
Sure. At recent count, we have 11 pipe bands that should be in attendance this year. In some years, we've had as many as 20, 22 pipe bands. And if anybody has ever experienced seeing all the bands out on the field playing at the same time, it is really awesome experience. So if nothing else, if you would just even come out and watch how exciting it is for that many full piping and drumming bands to get out on the field, and they do compete. Since COVID, some of the bands have struggled, of course, to find ways to continue either solo competitions or group band competitions, and that they have now, so they're scaled back a little bit this year just because of their inability to get together and practice and do the things that they need to enter the competition. But one of the things that Loch Norman did just to keep the momentum and actually provide a service to the piping community is we actually hosted a virtual competition last year in 2021. And it was a sanctioned event, and so we were able to carry on our games even though it was not open to the public. And then one of the other things that we did was also for the athletes, because they have to continue to compete every year to keep their score levels up so that they can go on, many of these folks go on to international competition. So you just can't drop out for a couple of years and expect to be performing at that level. So we also hosted a sanctioned athletic event out at Rural Hill last year also. And it was closed to the public, but we were able to have COVID restrictions and guidelines and still manage to carry on the competition. So these are the kind of things that Loch Norman Highland Games does to keep our name out there and keep people coming so that they don't think that, we've disappeared. So we would surely appreciate any of the support that y'all can offer and come out to our games this year.
And when are your games again?
April 9th and 10th. And tickets are available at lochnorman.com. You can get weekend tickets. You can get Saturday only, Sunday only. Parking passes are available. Whiskey tasting tickets are available. Those of you who like that sort of thing.
And early bird tickets are on sale right now, but then the prices will be higher at the gate. So if you're interested in coming, please jump on lochnorman.com, and.
This is just a way that Huntersville takes a national and international stage, and we're pretty proud of that.
So we do have one question from Commissioner Partee.
Hi, how are you guys doing today?
Hey.
Actually, I live off of Neck Road. I live in Lattice Springs, and every year when you have had the Highland Games, I got stuck in all that traffic going back there. But this year, I'm going to plan to attend,
Right?
but I need some information. Where can I get a nice custom tailored kilt so I can show off my diesel legs when I'm running around there as commissioner from town of Huntersville?
Well, I will say, I also own a business called Near and Far Scottish, and so I am a Scottish retailer here in Charlotte. I have a small shop down in Mint Hill, where I live, but I primarily do Scottish festivals, and I do sometimes as many as 25 festivals a year. I'm leaving Wednesday to go to another one. But I do custom kilts, and I'm more than happy to.
Leave your card, I'll be right there.
The only thing I might say is we're a little bit too close to the games, unfortunately, to get you on this year in time.
Well, but that brings up a good point. Like, if you're not Scottish, what are we doing coming to the Highland Games if we're not Scottish? But we have a historic encampment that goes all the way from Vikings and Vikings and Iron Age over to World War II. We have merchants like Helen has. We have an 18th century backcountry farm. We have all the athletic competitions. But also, here's the thing about Scottish people. You go around all the little tents, and you find your favorite one, and you get your little triumphs from them, yeah. But you find your favorite one, and there's a good chance if you hand them $20, they'll give you a membership card.
Well, the beauty of Ancestry.com is when you do your DNA, it comes back with these little countries that you are possibly attached with, and Scotland is one of my countries.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Partee, yeah.
We have resource nonprofit organizations that also do come out to the games that can help folks like yourself track down their heritage. And then, of course, being a local resource, once again, I'm happy to help. And even after the event, I brought some business cards. I'm happy to help.
So you have a couple more questions.
Okay.
Commissioner Munger?
Sure. Just out of curiosity, do you have I have a couple questions, but do you have any estimates on the total number of visitors and what proportion of those might be from out of state?
Okay, so in a weather obviously plays a huge part in this. If we have good weather, we'll have between 15 and 20,000 people coming. And I would say a good 60-70% of them are probably from out of town. Because you got people coming over. We have several Scottish clans that host their AGM, which is their business meeting, their national business meeting at our games. We have international visitors. We'll have one of our big draws this year is the Tannahill Weavers, which is a band from Scotland that plays traditional Scottish music. This year, to be perfectly honest, we need all of you to come because our games is a week earlier than it would typically be because Easter bumped us up a week, and that also tacks us on to spring break. So years like this where we're a week earlier and spring break is happening, attendance tends to be just a little bit lighter. So tell all your friends so you can all show up and get us our 15 to 20,000 people.
Right. And to that end, I would imagine you have a bunch of food vendors, food trucks,
Absolutely.
some crafts, and I mean, you got all kinds of things going out there. There's a little bit of something for everybody, probably.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of the Scottish food, so there'll be meat pies out there, there'll be sticky toffee pudding, you'll have your haggis if you're into the haggis.
Where's the haggis?
Yep. Scottish barbecue. So if you're a barbecue fan, this is slightly different than North Carolina barbecue. It's a little more smokier and the sauce is slightly different. And actually, we have a vendor that'll give you a plate of shepherd's pie, barbecue, and haggis. So you can try them all.
And the other thing I would like to say too, we really keep our standards high with regard to the vendors. We like authentic Scottish wares and Celtic wares whenever possible. So we do require that our vendors meet those standards. This is a little different than just a Celtic festival where you'll have a lot of different influences and you're kind of all over the place. This is really very specific culturally, and we try to adhere to that, so.
Sounds like a great experience. Looking forward to it.
Commissioner Kovacs?
Well, my question was just if you're going to have meat pies, because that's most important to me, but.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There'll be plenty of meat pies.
I grew up in Dunedin, Florida, so the Highland Games is just part of my everyday life, you know, so I'm super excited.
Have you been to ours?
I have not.
So you need to come to ours and you need to let us know like how they compare.
Well, and my dad is on the Central Florida Highland Games board, so, you know, stiff competition for me to judge, I'm just saying.
We'll look forward to your input.
You can go to as many.
Sorry, Commissioner Boone?
Thank you. I was on the fence of going to this, but if Derek's going to have a kilt on, I'm in.
Hey, we got some we can borrow. If you don't have yours by then, I'll let you borrow one of ours.
One little suggestion too is I also sell off the rack what's called a utility kilt. And those are just standard kilts with like all the pockets that hikers and all would wear. So it's not necessarily a tartan traditional kilt, but it'll make you feel like you're really in the moment, so.
Yeah, anyone can wear a black watch, anyone can wear a Royal Stewart, anyone can wear, you know, there's a couple of different options you have.
Very good. Thank you very much for coming this evening.
Thank you, Mayor Bills.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
So before we move into public comments, I do have a proclamation for this evening. Whereas Women's History Month is a dedicated month to reflect on the often overlooked contributions of women to the United States history, from Abigail Adams to Susan B. Anthony, Sojourner Truth to Rosa Parks, the timeline of women's history milestone stretches back to the founding of the United States. And whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, and whereas American women have played and continue to play critical economic, cultural, and social roles in every sphere in the life of the nation by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside of the home. And whereas American women have played a unique role throughout the history of the nation by providing the majority of the volunteer labor force of the nation, and whereas American women were particularly important in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our nation, and whereas American women have served our country courageously in the military, and whereas American women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, and the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements which create a more fair and just society for all. Now, therefore, I, Melinda Bales, Mayor of the town of Huntersville, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim March 2022 as Women's History Month in the town of Huntersville and commend its observance to all citizens. Thank you. And thank you to each and every woman in Huntersville who's helped make Huntersville the place that it is. We will now move on to our public comments. Ms. Caldwell. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's so good to see your face. I just want to remind everyone that comes to speak, you have 3 minutes. Commissioner Phillips has that. And if you wouldn't mind, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you for having me. Betty B.J. Caldwell, 14521 New Haven Drive, Huntersville. Preserving Rosenwald schools that are part of the landscape. The building of Rosenwald schools by Julius Rosenwald and Booker T. Washington was an idea conceived in the early 1900s to educate Negroes, now called blacks, and it was to provide them an opportunity to get an education. Several facts had to be included in their creation, as the building was not complete without a full understanding and consideration of its content in the landscape of African American life in the 20th century. The documentation and preservation of the Rosenwald School was not limited to a single structure, but inclusive of a range of site features that make up the Rosenwald cultural landscape. The school required a minimum of a 2-acre site where the school was to be the focal point, surrounded by a well, playground, a garden with privies, which are outside toilets. The main characteristics being that it had to fit into an existing African-American landscape that students were familiar with, perhaps near a church, and ours is near St. Philip's, in the open country with a backdrop setting of fields, fences, hedges, woods, or was close to places where parents farmed or worked. The fate of this Rosenwald School hangs in the balance of the Historic Landmarks Commission and the current Huntersville Board of Commissioners. These two entities can vote to make this legendary Rosenwald School a historic landmark. The outcome is not certain or known by former Black students whose love of it and are in relationship with members, that didn't go right. The outcome is not certain or known by former students whose love of it and they are in relationship with it, and hope that you will vote to affirm this historic designation. Now, there are no guarantees, so I caution myself and others to wait for the vote before formulating serious plans to continue to work to keep the history and memory alive for the world to see how important the creation was for the education of Black children. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. The next person who signed up to speak is Lee Holman. Mr. Holman, you have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for continuing to work on TA 22-02, the Rail Transit Center Residential Density Bonus, in Commissioner Kidwell's absence. I know that he agrees that the subject ordinances need to be amended quickly. I continue to hear various reasons for continuing to allow unlimited density, and most of those come from real estate interest or those who simply haven't looked into the details. It's true, if our town leaders were to assess Huntersville as a business model, then allowing the maximum density would make the most sense in the short term. The details is where we need to look. This affects only a quarter-mile area around a rail transit center that was designated by resolution in 1996. Also, this only affects those projects that meet the qualifications for a major subdivision status. This does not affect any by right build plans. As for town center, there really isn't much this can affect that has not already been approved and would thereby be grandfathered in. And to speak to those who say, regardless of the failure of the rail, we need the density, I would argue patience. My guess is that residential density in the quarter-mile radius of town center is currently roughly 2 units per acre, probably less than 50 homes. North State Town Center project will bring 186 residences at a density of 20. Vermillion Village will bring 341 residences at a density of 12. Vermillion Front will bring another 99 residences at a density of 70. In total, we will add 626 residences, more than 10 times what we have now in high-density housing. Patience. This is an experiment. Let the current planned projects build out and then assess to see if we need to open the tap on density again. Don't forget, this is a rail transit density bonus. I'm not reiterating just to say the rail is a fail, so this should be too. No, the rail transit is the backbone of the TOD overlay. Without the rail, there is no alternate transportation to handle the unlimited density this calls for. Those 626 additional residences, let's call that 1,000 more cars going back and forth through the intersection on Old Statesville Road and Gilead Road intersection, trying to find somewhere new to eat or a local merchant to shop with. Removing this is the right thing to do.
Mr. Holman, would you mind stating your name and address, though, for the record before you leave us?
Lee Holman, 100 Cambridge Road.
Thank you. And Crystal Silvas? Thank you for joining us this evening. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record, and then you have 3 minutes.
Of course. Crystal Silvas, 13925 Beatties Ford Road in Huntersville. You guys thought you missed me. I got here right at 6. I was shoving food on plates and running out the door. So I watched the meeting over, well, it ended up moving here. And again, CSD was stated as being a by right build. Again, this is a stadium according to Huntersville ordinance. Also, according to Huntersville ordinance, it is not allowed, because it is not running as a membership fee basis, to be an outdoor recreation facility. 2 weeks ago, I sent an email regarding this. I have not heard a reply yet, so I'm hoping we can maybe get things moving here. I know that you guys are going to be having another meeting regarding the noise ordinance. I will say 2 weeks ago, I watched the pre-meeting, and it was pretty astounding and frustrating that after hundreds of Huntersville residents came and said, hey, we have an issue with the noise level, that it was brought, hey, let's just make it so they are not liable, they don't have to follow the noise ordinance at all. That was pretty unbelievable to many of us, and honestly frustrating, since those are my tax dollars that went into revising an ordinance for a Davidson school where we have proven they are not following noise ordinance, and it's not a reasonable volume. Our noise ordinance states that if it is a sound amplification device of any sort, we should not be able to hear that from 100 feet from that broadcast. My front door is about 1,500 feet, and I have recordings over and over that I have sent to you, videos where I am inside of my home and I can hear them playing their games. It's unbelievable also that the one time that the decibels were tested and brought before you was the one and only time, and I remember this game, I'm pretty sure I brought it up to Stacy, the one time that none of us were bothered by it. That's unacceptable. Any high school football game, the average is 90 decibels. My home is 43.5 during only the daytime hours. That's an average. I tested it 8 times throughout 12 hours. I'm going to ask that the questions that we've asked regarding the ordinances be answered. I'm going to ask that while we look at Cornelius and Davidson as far as noise ordinances, we also recognize the fact that they are not allowed to build a school in a rural zone at all. And they have to get special approval for any kind of sports stadium. It's not possible at all in Cornelius. Thank you.
Thank you. No one else has signed up at this point. We do have people who've signed up for the public hearings, and we will get to that. We're now at agenda changes. Are there any agenda changes? Is there a motion on the floor to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt agenda as is?
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that's 5-1. Or I'm sorry, 5-0. I forgot. He's not. I did. Oh, that's. So now we'll move on to the consent agenda. We're getting used to this new layout. So this is our first time running through the new layout for our board meetings. Is there a motion for the consent agenda? Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion, I have a second to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. We will now move to the public hearings. Item 9A. This is TA 22-01, amend zoning ordinance to clarify the downzoning definition and initiation of the process. Ms. Mullins, I always mess it up, and I'm so sorry.
You're fine. Hey, it's great to see you all this evening. I'm going to be presenting text amendment TA 2201 on downzoning and would like to enter my staff report into the record. So the purpose of TA 2201 is to update the zoning ordinance to match Chapter 160D's language on the downzoning of property. And this is Chapter 160D, Article 6 that's shown, and it was also included in your packet. Local governments had until July 1st, 2021 to adopt the necessary ordinance amendments to comply with Chapter 160D. At that date, the rules of Chapter 160D apply whether or not the local ordinance has been updated. A text amendment was approved in June 2021 that encompassed majority of amendments required to comply with 160D. However, it did not include the updated language from 160D 601 on the downzoning of property. So the town attorneys crafted the ordinance language and worked with staff to prepare this text amendment. The Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board recommended approval of TA 2201 on January 6, 2022. Planning staff recommends approval of the text amendment application as proposed. The Planning Board recommendation is scheduled for March 22nd, and the Town Board decision is scheduled for April 18th. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
All right, we'll open it up for questions. Commissioner Phillips.
Do we have to legally do this?
Yes, I would defer to Emily, but yes, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, that's correct.
And then because I know I've sent you guys a ton of questions, are there specific examples of why this is important and needs to take place from across the state? Because I talked to a developer and they said that as it stands currently, anybody could have someone else's property potentially downzoned, and that was why this is important.
So I can't speak to the intent, but that seems to be the case, yes, to protect against that very thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Munger.
So I have a few questions, actually. Mine right now is specifically pertaining to Section 2.9. The statement is, therefore, 2 years after the date of approval of any petition for conditional zoning district or MH overlay district, the planning board shall examine the progress made toward developing the property in accordance with the approved petition and any conditions attached thereto. Question. Currently, there are no instances where we've done this because this is the first step in pursuing this, where we would refer it back to planning board. Is that correct?
I would defer to Jack on that. I'm not sure of the history.
Jack, you were hiding from me. I didn't see you.
So you're asking a question about the section of the ordinance that's not changing, but the existing language of the ordinance?
Section 2.9, I believe.
So everything that is normal print, do you actually have the ordinance? Okay. So
It does appear to be normal print, so yes, it's existing.
So that's not changing. So what that section basically says is, when people go through conditional rezoning, the town of Huntersville wants to make sure they're real projects.
Yep.
And not hypothetical for rezoning. And so what it says that is after 2 years of the date of approval, you go back and see if things have progressed. That's not changing from this text amendment.
Right.
And since I've been here, there's only one that I can think of that took a long time. That was Huntersville East. And when it was approved, the holdup was getting sewer up to that site. And so they came back to the town, I think twice, over a couple-year period to just say, here's where we're at in the process. Then the downturn of the economy came and the Great Recession, and then the state legislature adopted a rule across the state of North Carolina that just basically put a hold on everybody's timeline throughout the state of North Carolina. So bottom line is, we're not changing that. Pretty much every development that goes through conditional rezoning, it's a real project. It gets going. So does that help answer your question?
It does. It kind of changes the tenor of it overall. I'm just curious, Planning Board does actively track that to ensure that projects that have been approved by this board do in fact move along, so to speak.
Right, so it's the planning staff that does it on behalf of the planning board, correct?
Yeah, okay. Yep, that will cover everything.
Okay, Commissioner Kovacs.
Commissioner Munger asked one of my questions because I was going to ask, how are we monitoring this? And I just want to clarify because it's written in here differently. Is it changing from 3 years to 2 years? Because it's marked out, it's written both.
Correct. It is from 3 years to 2 years because the statute says that vesting is for 2 years. So we're just matching up our ordinance with the state statute on vesting of projects.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we can go ahead and close this public hearing.
Oh, I would like to enter my staff report into the record. I'm not sure if everybody heard it.
I heard you do that.
Okay.
So,
Just want to make sure.
yes, thank you. So we will now go ahead and close this public hearing, and we will move on to item 9B. And item 9B is TA 21-15 rooftop amenity spaces. Mr. Semino?
Thank you, Mayor. Enter the staff report into the record. What you see is a couple of photos of what we have been talking to the Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board about rooftop amenities. This proposed text amendment is to allow and establish standards for rooftop amenity spaces when they exceed the building height. So that's what this text amendment is about. So how did we get here? How we got here is what you see on the left is North State Project. North State Project is next to Town Center, and it was approved at 52 feet and 52.5 feet total height, okay? So the developers contacted staff and said, well, we would like to put an amenity on our roof. Could we do that? And so the drawing at the far right shows a kind of a elevated section that shows 11 feet tall that they asked to be able to do, and staff advised them that you could not do that because the ordinance reads that places that are habitable, have to meet the height standards. And so this is intended for people to be in. So it wouldn't meet it. But we thought that it might make sense in the future as Huntersville grows and develops. So we took the concept to the Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board in October. Now, you were provided the minutes of the Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board. They met 3 different times. The first time when we met in October was, here's something that's coming forward. Do you think it's worthy of us looking at a text amendment? And the answer was yes. It came back in December with a draft language. There was quite a bit of discussion. They did not act on it, and then it went back to them in January, and ultimately they did not recommend approval. It was 4-4. So that's how it got brought forward to you. So this is not a North State proposal. This was staff talking to the Huntersville Ordinance Advisory Board who said, yep, go ahead and draft something up. But as you can see from the minutes, it was very controversial, and so there was a lot of discussion on that. So the minutes were asked by town board members as well as the Ordinances Advisory Board, saying, make sure everybody has the minutes so you understand how the discussion went. So that's why that information is there. So here are 2 illustrations. So the rooftop amenity space deals with 2 types of buildings, a shop front building and an apartment building. The shop front building, your maximum height is 48 feet, and the apartment building is 35 feet. So what I want to get across is that this section of the ordinance applies just to when you want to exceed that height, okay? So when you exceed that height in that yellow area, that's when these rules kick in. If your building and your amenity center is below those heights, you could do whatever you choose to do. So I just want to be clear that we're talking about once you get to that maximum height, that's when the rules kick in. So 8.7 of our ordinance today basically says your height of your building is controlled by your building type. The second part talks about Structure and structural components that are not intended for human occupancy can basically exceed your height limits. Those are towers, steeples, flagpoles, chimneys, water tank, things of that nature. Hence, when they asked us to have habitable space above the height, we said, no, you couldn't do that. There also is no height limitations, won't apply to utility poles, skylights, roof structures, elevators, stairways, et cetera. So these things are already allowed. And then today, also, our ordinance has a fourth provision, and it says just commercial communication towers can exceed those height limits. So the proposal is to add a fifth category, and that's specifically rooftop amenities. And again, it's the rooftop amenities that exceed height limit. So in your agenda packet, which you all have, these are the standards that we came up with. And these standards, we came up with these standards, when I say we, the staff did, based on feedback from the Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board, and Kaylee assisted me on that. And also, Kaylee did the research on other communities. What have they done? And there's not a lot, but that's what we came up with. So location, so there was quite a bit of concern. If you've got this tall building at the maximum height, and then you put something on top of that, there was concern about the impact of neighbors. So the proposal here is rooftop amenities shall be separated by a distance of at least 100 feet from property lines of a single-family residential use when such single-family residence is located in the rural, transitional, neighborhood residential, or general residential districts. So those districts, you got to be 100 feet if you're going to qualify for this. Secondly, the height of the roof amenity space, the structure therein, shall not exceed 15 foot above the proposed building height. So again, if you're at a maximum of 50 or 48 feet, no more than 15 feet above that. To the roof area, the rooftop amenity space is measured to the outermost exterior elements, shall not exceed 1,500 square feet. We came up with that based on looking at other ordinances and getting feedback from the Ordinances Advisory Board. Access rooftop amenity space shall be available to all residents of the dwelling unit in the building, but not to the commercial tenants of a mixed-use building. What we didn't want is commercial activity to get upstairs. So the mixed-use building has commercial downstairs and residential. It's intended for that. Lighting and noise rooftop amenities shall adhere to the lighting standards set forth in the ordinance. Rooftop amenity space shall adhere to the lighting standards, the noise ordinance. The use of amplified sound shall be prohibited, and exterior lighting would be shut off at no later than 11 o'clock. So those were things that were talked about to the Ordinances Advisory Board and getting feedback on concerns of this text amendment. And lastly is that the rooftop amenity could qualify from open space. We have an open space requirement, and so that was a part of the ordinance. And so in that, towards the end of your ordinance, you'll see this added to the whole list of different open spaces that we have, where the rooftop amenity space can also count towards the open space for a project. So the Ordinances Advisory Board, as I mentioned, did not recommend it. They voted 4-4. And so that is not endorsed by the Ordinances Advisory Board. We had in your agenda packet the 3 meetings, as well as the information we presented to them at the first meeting back in October. Staff did recommend, or does recommend, approval of the text amendment. Planning Board will hear this request on the 22nd, and the Town Board is decision scheduled at this point in time on the 18th of April. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I can go back to the ordinance or whatever you would like me to do.
Before we open it up for questions, we do have someone who signed up to speak. Can we go ahead and do that first, if that's all right with the board, and then I'll open it up for questions. Amy Hallman. Oh. No, I don't think so. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record.
Amy Hallman, 100 Cambridge Road. This one I'm a little less prepared for. Okay, but the thing about the rooftop ordinance option for our downtown is, you notice that the zoning districts, none of those are for TC. TC is going to be unlimited. It's going to be whatever TC wants, whatever the downtown developers want to do. And I have to look out for those folks. I know in the pre-meeting we talked about having a a committee to discover what we're going to be, if we're going to rebrand or who we're going to be. And, a lot of us are saying we're not a bedroom community. Some of you are saying we're not a village. Some of you are saying we're not eclectic or we want to be these things. We don't know what we are. So maybe we shouldn't start acting like a city of Charlotte if we're not entirely sure who we are yet. The city of Charlotte has the rooftop amenities in their more urban areas. What about Cornelius? What about Davidson? We do this all the time where we say, we looked at all these other municipalities that do these things. What about them? Do they have rooftop amenities in their smaller downtowns? My thought is, I think about this woman that comes in here all the time to talk about the noise at CSD out by the rural football fields and the noise and the lights ordinance and how she can't get anything handled there. And then it makes me think 100 feet is not going to take care of the families that already live in the downtown, much less where these other zoning districts are. The previous HOAB ordinances advisory board didn't vote to approve this, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration. I get that there's no amplified sound with this, but yesterday or this weekend when we had the pound exercise where they're beating around on all, could they do that up there? Could they have drum circles? That sound's going to carry. We've lost a lot of trees on Gilead and 115. That's going to be a lot of sound that can go without the amplification. 15 feet's a lot. It's another story and a half for a building that we've already given so much to that it's bigger than DPK, taller in places. To give them another 1.5 feet, I mean, come on. So I think that if you want to still take on the rooftop amenities, that they need to be special use permit because you need to be able to control that and you need to be able to take that in consideration on a case-by-case basis, not just a blanket say, come on in. That's it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Coleman. We're going to go ahead and open it up for questions from the board. Commissioner Kovacs?
Bear with me. So we have the project this was based off of is 52.5 feet already approved, which is 4.5 feet above the allowable height. This 15 feet, it would not be on top of the 52.5, it would be, or it would be.
It would be, yes, it would be on top of the 52.5.
Okay, so that we've already had to provide a height variance, and then it would be 15 feet on top of that.
Correct.
One question I have, and it might slightly be rhetorical, but I'm not really understanding why we're going to change an ordinance for one project. So I wondered if you have there been other builders or developers that have come requesting this, or was it just that one?
Yeah, no builders have come and requested this. We heard what they were proposing to do. We as a staff said that might have applicability for other buildings in the future, so that's why we went to the Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board to have that discussion. At that first meeting, they said, yes, let's draft something up. There wasn't, yes, absolutely, let's do it. It was, that might make sense, but let's see what the text amendment would look like.
Okay. I noticed that it said under access that it would be available to all residents of dwelling units. Now, since we are referring to North State, are we talking about only the residents of the apartment building, or are we making it so it's allowable for the townhome residents? Like, is it for the property as a whole, or for just the building itself?
Right. Very good question. So it could be for everybody in this subdivision, the North State subdivision, but that will be up to the developer. They might want to just limit it to the residents of the apartment. But if they want to open it up to everybody in the subdivision, then we could count it as open space that's required.
That brings me to my open space. I'm really uncomfortable with the idea of this being able to count towards the urban open space requirements. We're trying to keep green space, and I feel like this might just lead into another backdoor to shove a little bit more into a project, a few more dwellings into a project, so that way they can just put green space on top. One of my questions was already kind of touched upon, but I am very concerned about Noise levels, I know we have a noise ordinance that we're working on, and the idea of putting this into play and saying, oh, it's okay, the sound ordinances will cover it, I don't feel confident that that would be appropriate at this time. As we heard one of the speakers previously say, I know it's a different situation, but we say 100 feet, she lives 1,500 feet and can hear. And we're taking down, if we're talking about this project, we're taking down all of those trees, which takes away all of those sound barriers, and then adding something 57 and a half, or 67 and a half feet tall, that sound is gonna carry. So I'm really worried about residents that are in the surrounding. And I just think when I was reading the HOAB meetings, I think them not being able to come to a consensus even after 3 meetings is very telling. But I do appreciate you obviously have been putting a lot of work into this since you've had to bring it up since October. I'm just very uncomfortable with this.
Any other questions? Commissioner Phillips?
So, as it stands right now, if somebody like a North State wanted to do this, is there a process for them to go through? Is it conditional, special use, or they're just out of luck?
Okay, since we're talking about that, let me go back to their drawing. So the conditional rezoning that was approved limited their height to 52 feet, 52.5 feet. So if they wanted to exceed that, they will need to come back through the conditional rezoning. That's how they would get that. So as it was mentioned, the height limit is 48 feet. Through their conditional rezoning, they got it moved up to 52.5 feet. And if they want to go higher than that for space that folks will be occupying, they will have to come back and amend their conditional rezoning. So that is the option to come back.
So, I'm not trying to make decisions up here tonight by any means, but there's one project that's already been very controversial. The only one who could use this as it stands, I'm going to say this probably a lot tonight, and you guys can get mad at me all you want, but all Huntersville isn't downtown, but downtown is already here, and they're already, trying to stomach this North State thing, and then it's like, we thought we put it to rest, and then, wait, there's more. And what also concerns me, and I know these are little things, but they're huge things if you live over there, like the lights at 11 p.m. I'm a night owl, cool by me. Derek, not so much, that's a lot. In my fun 20s, I loved staying with friends in downtown because they had all these fun things. But I'm really, really uncomfortable with this, and I'm uncomfortable the town has taken the lead. I personally just feel like this should be something that comes to us on a case-by-case basis, because while this might be something awesome for Brighton or Burkdale or even the business park, I don't think this is it for downtown, and I'd rather just deal with them one by one until we have too many, and then let's go from there. But I appreciate you, Jack. I know I wore you out this weekend, and you are a gem of gems.
Commissioner Partee?
Thank you, Mayor. Over the past weekend, I sat down and I read the Ordinance Advisory Board's minutes, and I read all the comments that the committee members have made. I have, in my fun times, I love rooftop amenity space. The socialization that it provides, the entertainment, and also the availability to the members or the residents that live there is very important. The question that I see is it right for Huntersville? Now, mind you, the city of Charlotte has a lot of open space amenities, and it's nice to sit up there and have a drink and see the skyline of the city and the sunset. But that's urban. That's the city. Huntersville is different. When my wife and I chose to move here, we moved here because of the urban, the rural feel, the trees, the greenery, the foliage, I should put it that way. Huntersville has a quaint and distinct character. And to me, that character is, we want to maintain the feel of that rural presence. 4 stories, having a rooftop amenity 4 stories above Gilead Road doesn't feel right to me as a town of Huntersville. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to reread and listen to the community, see how they feel, and I'll make my judgment accordingly.
Commissioner Munger?
Hey, Jack, how you doing? Living the dream, right? All right, so one of the things that was kind of put out there a couple different times was that HOAB failed to act in one way or another. It was 4-4. Just want to throw out into the record, one of the part of the minutes from the HOAB meeting, Scott Moore specifically stated that he would not be voting in favor of this because while a step in the right direction, he thinks that the sound noise additions are unnecessary and the 1,500 square feet is too limiting. He would be comfortable with the height exceeding 15 feet, and we should do everything we can to incentivize these improvements. Part of the reason that I read this is because he actually wanted it to be more expansive than it is. We limited it down. We did still arrive at a 4-4 vote, but it provides a little bit of context as to what was happening on the HOAB. That said, questions I have for you are more of a technical nature. Not going to make any other statements, but if you had mentioned one of the avenues available to North State in this particular instance is if they wouldn't open themselves back up to a conditional district or a CD rezoning. If they put that on the table to allow this for the specific instance, do they put everything back on the table?
No.
Just this?
Just this. So conditional rezoning is that only which an applicant offers.
Okay.
So the applicant would have to come back and say, I want to exceed the 52.5 feet, I want to be this. And that's what you would be deciding on.
Okay. A speaker asked specifically, do Cornelius or Davidson allow this type of rooftop amenity?
Not that we're aware of, but I do know in Cornelius, they do allow up to 6 stories. So we're actually a couple stories below them. So I know it's hard to compare apples and oranges, but.
That's a fair statement. You absolutely should have that out there. So appreciate that one. Section 875B II, shall not exceed 1,500 square feet. How did we arrive at this number?
Right, so that was, again, based on feedback from the Ordinances Advisory Board, and then looking at the ordinance that we had, that Kaylee had checked, that were in your agenda packet. So it was, do we do it as a square foot limit? Do we do it as a percentage limit? And we came up with the square foot limit.
Just based on the feedback from HOAB and whatnot? Okay, perfect. Would it make sense, I know again, and I was on the HOAB, I apologize, but someone had mentioned in the minutes that perhaps instead of having just a blanket, everything count towards urban open space, maybe just a percentage of that. Did staff take that into consideration? Was that a possibility?
We looked at it and we just limited it to 1,500 square feet, which is what the limit is on that. So if they provide it, they could get that
A 1-to-1 ratio essentially for urban open space? Okay, good. And again, zoning ordinance 872, and I apologize for all these questions, but I'm just trying to run through them. Any part of a non-civic structure which extends above the height limit must be separated from lot lines by a minimum distance of 1 foot for every 4 feet in height measured from the ground. So my understanding of this, and I'm going to round up and say if this building plus the rooftop amenity is 68 feet, the setback should be 17 feet. And I know I'm probably wrong on that, but you can correct me.
Yeah, so what that is getting at, well, first off, the sentence before that talks about if you're adjacent to a residential zone, whatever your height is, you need to be 1 foot from that property line to whatever that is. So that's how that's done. The section you're talking about is now we're not next to residential, and now it's the difference between your height limit and then your accessory structure that you're adding on top of it, in this case, an amenity structure, and that's when that additional footage comes in.
So it could apply, but not in this particular instance. Okay. And last question. Section 875AI override does it override this ordinance, or are they in conflict with each other?
Right, so it does not, it overrides. So what we're talking about is if this project talks about what your setback is, if you're adjacent to a single-family home in a rural transitional neighborhood residential, general residential, it's 100 feet.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most restrictive standard, so that's going to apply.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jack, this has been a dogfight for a couple months already. Hadn't been to the planning board yet. Any chance of you emailing me the names of the members of the HOAB who voted in favor of this? I might be missing something.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, Kaylee, we'll get you that shirt.
Any other questions? We've had the speaker. I'm just making sure I'm checking on my boxes. So I guess we can go ahead and close that public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Let's move on to item 9C. This is R21-17, HFH Partners LLC rezoning. Mr. Richards.
Good evening, Brian Richards for the planning staff, and at this time, I'd like to enter my staff report to the record. We have a proposal for a conditional district rezoning for the Gilead Road mixed-use project. As you can see, this site is located on Gilead Road. It is currently zoned neighborhood residential. They are proposing to rezone to traditional neighborhood TNDU conditional district. Here's a current aerial of the site. Not so current since some of the homes have been removed recently, but this is at 202 through 208 Gilead Road. The project size is about 3.8 acres. The current use are single-family homes. We're proposing to have up to 19,000 square feet of commercial space and 29 townhomes. The building types will be highway commercial and attached housing. The proposed density is 7.6 units per acre. The developer is proposing 2 urban open spaces. At the front, there's a small plaza, and in the rear, there's a pedestrian pathway for the cottages or townhomes in the rear to front upon. There is an existing home on the west portion of the property that's going to be renovated, and there will be a new 2-story commercial building that's about 12,000 square feet. No TIAs were required by the town or the state for this project. Currently, the site has 19 specimen trees. In this zoning district for the TND, there's a requirement of a 30% tree save. They are proposing a 12% tree save, which means they'll be going into mitigation with the staff. We're working with the applicant to come up. It will be all monies, or will it be replanting on site? And the TND district does not have a canopy requirement, so it's just tree save. The applicants are requesting 4 modifications. The first is for a buffer modification. Article 7.5 requires that all projects of this nature have a 20-foot buffer around the perimeter. The applicant is requesting to reduce the buffer on the north and eastern sides. On the eastern side, they are proposing to install a privacy fence along adjacent to the CMS property. That's their loading and utility area over here. They're offering to have a higher percentage of evergreen trees. I'll show that too. It's right along here. That's the CMS loading zone. That's where they bring the food trucks in. So they're offering a higher percentage of evergreen plantings as well as the privacy fence. Staff is in support of this modification request. The second modification is for a rear setback. Attached homes have requirements of a 20 to 25-foot rear setback. The ordinance under Article 8.1.4 allows for site-specific development plans to be considered that for, excuse me, for lots to front upon, things other than public streets, as long as they maintain emergency vehicles, access for emergency vehicles. These guys, the folks here are providing a private alley with a public access easement for those vehicles. Additionally, when you take things into consideration for modifications, you can look at design and flexibility. In our 2040 plan, land use policy 8.1 encourages flexibility design and specifically mentions setbacks. And this, I think this is a good situation where we can look at modifying these. And we feel that this is consistent with the spirit of the ordinance, and staff is recommending this modification as well. The third one is building height, which we've talked about a few times tonight. Attached buildings have a height of 30 feet, which is measured at the eaves of the project, so right along this area here. Right there, where basically before you get to the roof, before the roof starts going up. The applicants are requesting a height of 33 feet for just 3 feet more. As part of our analysis of this project and looking at our plans, we feel that this is in keeping with the spirit of the ordinance due to some of the flexibility that's called out in the 2040 plan. And so we're in support of this as well. A fourth modification is for internal landscaping. When you do construction, we have requirements to replant. And replanting is based on the size of your lot. So the smaller your lot, you only have to do 2 trees. The larger your lot, more trees. This project is proposing lot sizes of between 1,000 and 2,700 square feet. When you have a lot of that small of nature and you put a townhouse on there, there's not a lot of room left for trees. So we're currently working with the applicant to come up with some measures and some ideas on this. So at this time, we're not making any recommendation on this. We're going to continue talking with the applicant, and we'll have that resolved before we go to planning board in a few weeks. They provided us some elevation. You'll see the applicants have a much prettier picture than I have to share. But this is the proposed commercial building that's along Gilead Road. It's about 30 feet, just over 30 feet tall, 2 stories, all brick. We have the provided elevations for Gilead Road. If you notice that on the top picture, those are the units that would front Gilead Road. They're 3 stories. And then this lower picture is the cottage units that front the urban open space. Looking at the 2040 plan, this project is consistent with the town core section and our future land use. Looking also, it's also consistent with the standards of the Tier 2 that we've talked about over the last couple of years. There are a number of policies in the 2040 community plan that support this project. I won't read them all out for you, but they're in their staff report. And then we go back all the way to the 2006 downtown master plan. We are updating the downtown master plan now, but that's not ready for us to make judgments against, so this is what we go back to. Back in 2006, they called out this area to be redeveloped, possibly for some single family and some office use. And then another item to look at is the Gilead Road cross-section. We're working with our engineering staff as well as NCDOT and the applicants. At this time, Gilead Road is categorized as a minor thoroughfare, so that allows us to require up to 70 feet of right-of-way. So we have an allocation of 70 feet, what we can, it's what we can require. The developer is offering 80 feet. At this time, the state has a widening project, which is STIP U5807. If I'm not mistaken, this project has been bumped back into the STIP program, and it has not been designed, so we don't know what the right-of-way is going to be. Engineering is going to be conservative, and if they're requesting 100-foot of right-of-way, like as I had mentioned before, the most we can require them to reserve is 70, and they're offering 80, and that 80 is consistent with the cross-section from the 2006 downtown master plan. And we are in support of this. And I'm here to answer any questions, and I believe the applicant has a small presentation as well.
Board, I would like to ask a quick question. Would you like to hear, we do have someone who signed up to speak. Would you like to hear from them now, or would you like to hear the applicant first and then hear the applicant? Should we ask questions now? We can ask questions.
Okay.
Once you have all the information. Sure. That'd be good. So we'll go ahead and start with the applicant.
My timer out.
15 minutes.
I know that Brian Hines talked.
Good evening.
Jay Henson, 8926 Lizzie Lane, and Brian Hines.
121 Gilead. Good to see you all.
Yeah, I just want to kind of go quickly on the site plan, sort of the concept we came up with. We really studied the 2040 plan and the downtown master plan, trying to mix as many of the elements as we could. And at the end, after multiple meetings with staff, we came up with a plan that would integrate some townhomes that would front Gilead Road. And then in the back, we came up with a concept, since the units don't front the public street, we came up, well, the option in the ordinance that allows you to front open space. So we created these cottage townhomes. So these would be different, obviously, than the ones that front Gilead were, tall with the garage in the back. These townhomes are 2 stories so that, the living room and those areas are down at the lower level, and you can look out into the, to the garden space. And then on the west side, we want to preserve the yellow house there, and, hopefully that could turn into, a restaurant or some type of use like that that would be good for the area. And we sort of shown a 2,000 square foot future expansion in the back, just in case that would, be converted for like a dining area or something. And a commercial building, 6,000 square feet, 2 stories, that would front Gilead, that could be, very flexible for any kind of, use like that. But the nice thing about that is the way we've got it oriented, there's a nice public space between the yellow house and the new commercial building that would allow for, people to congregate, sort of some overflow, have some tables, et cetera. So kind of makes a nice community space sort of in that area. One other little feature that we're really happy about too is in the very back, with the greenway that's behind CMS property, we're hopeful to get an easement that we could, get through there and connect in that and allow that to, penetrate into this site. One of the things that we are in the process of incorporating, something really cool that I like, is we've got pervious pavers for the parking lot and the alley. And the pervious pavers, from the appearance, they look like brick, but it's got, a little bit of a gap in it, so water will penetrate down. And the point is, instead of having one pond, a regional pond, it would be, the water would soak into the ground at the source rather than, collected and dispersed. So, the state has, practice that allows that, where the water is actually stored in a loose stone bed down below, and we calculate the volume for the whole site. We do infiltration tests to make sure that water will penetrate into the ground, and it's sort of a different way to control the stormwater, but it's a great application in a sort of, call it an urban setting.
Yeah, and one thing is before we go to the next slide, as this project has evolved, we've been able to get very creative and try to figure out what are we missing, what are we trying to really create here. And then with the townhome, the piece of it, we wanted something completely unique, something that hasn't really been done before. But then once we came up with a design like this, we were like, who is going to be who's going to be the partner that goes alongside of us, that has the same vision for the townhouses, that can also complement what we're trying to experience, what we're trying to create and the environment there on the commercial piece. We're selling the townhouse pads. Our builder is here that we're partnering with, Meeting Street Homes. So if you have any questions for them, but we feel like they're the right group for us and the community. They're locals. So if you have any questions for them, they're in attendance as well.
Real quickly, question was asked, I believe, maybe at the community meeting, is why the T&D zoning? And, we wanted to go with the T&D, specific reason is to allow the townhomes on Gilead and the cottage townhomes to be all attached, to be the 100% attached. And then looking through the ordinance, there's site and size requirements for T&D, but this site was so unique that, setting in this location where, you could see, wow, Brian, that got really off on the margins. We're real close to, the Civic, the school, the post office, grocery stores, all that stuff. So it really fits in with what the intent of a traditional neighborhood development community would look like with that proximity. And, we're not trying to increase the density or the use. The same use, you know, we can do commercial or residential. You know, it's not a density bonus, you know, there's other things you could do. So it just felt like it's a better product in that community. Here's just at the end are some of the images that, you know, we're thinking about for the commercial building, obviously in the Yellow House, but trying to create some kind of nice vibrant space there with that open area. And I didn't mention, but we are, you know, one of the trees that we wanted to save was there's one sort of right off the driveway at the Yellow House. So we want to kind of put that as part of the, you know, as part of this front plaza. It's an elevation of the images you have of the townhomes along Gilead Road. You know, another image of Gilead Road, how the sort of, you know, structured, you know, with the facades and how they, you know, sort of all unique. And then this is sort of an image of the courtyard where, and we didn't show the trees, like the proposed trees, because it would have just blocked all this and it wouldn't be able to see the character of the buildings. But, you know, having an open space that, you know, people kind of come out and congregate and, you know, sit on the porch, look out the window and have, you know, some nice landscape area. Yeah, questions?
Yes, I would like to go ahead and have the speaker come up. And Ms. Holman? That way you have everything. Ms. Holman, if you wouldn't mind stating your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Amy Holman, 100 Cambridge Road. I'm going to do a new role tonight. I'm going to come up here and tell you something I'm for. I actually like the project. You know, there are some things that I hope that they can work on, obviously saving a few more trees, but overall, I mean, the lots are fairly empty of trees, and I think it's been a very thoughtful project, especially in terms of the water system and how they're going to deal with the school and beside the Macaulay property. I like the cottage townhomes. I'm hoping builders that there's some room for maybe some bigger porches on the front. I think that was something that was part of that homey feel to them. But overall, I mean, when we talk about the 2040 plan and wanting diversity in housing, I mean, this is really one of those things, especially the cottage townhomes. They're different. They're not anything anybody's done. It's not just business as usual. And as I said, I think it's thoughtful. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Ms. Holman. So now, Board, I will open it up for questions. Who would like to go? Commissioner Partee?
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quick, square footage on the townhomes and square footage on the cottage houses.
The townhome square footage, I'm gonna say an average is 2,000 square feet. Would that be correct, Abe and Joe?
A little less than that.
Yeah.
They range from smallest units to 1,200, there's 2 units that are 1,200 square feet.
Abe, can you come up here and
Yeah.
speak,
Please.
please?
Yeah.
The pointer, so you can show the 16-foot units, yeah.
Abe Lehman, 6020 Stevens Road, Huntersville.
Where's the button? Where's the pointer?
Yeah, the pointer.
The pointer?
Yeah, so what we wanted to do with our floor plans was, and she mentioned diversity of product, which is what we tried to incorporate here. There's 5 different floor plans in here with 5 different sizes ranges. So we started around just right under 1,200 square feet for 2 of the units to get some affordable spots to come in here. They're 2 bedrooms, and then we go into sticking with the 2 stories, into the 1,600 square foot range, which are at the end of the green. Right there, those are 3 bedrooms, and then into the 2,000 square foot range for the remainder of those units on the 2 stories. Those are all master up product, and then the 3 stories will have two different product within those. One is 1,600 square feet, and the other is just under
2,000 square feet, right around 1960 square feet for the others. Thank you.
And Commissioner Munger?
Always a question. So you had mentioned, I believe, the townhomes across the front, the three-story, all have garages. Is that correct? Do any of the other units have garages?
That's correct. They all have.
All of them do?
All of them except the two on the far right there. And that has a detached garage and open space. But all the units along the courtyard, those have garages, and the townhomes on Gilead all have garages. All two-bedroom, and we exceed, the parking requirements of the 1.5 per bedroom, within that area, not just, not counting the parking lot over to the west.
Okay. So, yeah, then that kind of answers the next question I had. But out of curiosity, I'm looking at all these units. There's one yellow spot you didn't point to. What is that? The one that's closest to the Huntersville Elementary. Down. That one.
Oh, that's a detached garage.
Oh, that's just a detached garage.
That's the only one, yeah. It's a detached garage for the two units at the end of the.
Okay. And my last question is, I know we're still working through staff comment 4. Do you have in mind what kind and amount of trees you're planning on putting in?
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to put the majority of the trees on site. We're going to have, the street trees along Gilead Road will be small maturing trees per the NCDOT requirements. So, and by the time you have those, in the courtyard, we'll have, a mixture of landscape material and trees. So we want to, we'll have they'll have a nice canopy in that area. We'll have some along the sides of the buildings. I mean, I'm not counting the buffers, but, all the interior parking lot, the sides of the building, I mean, we're going to, try to keep as many of those there on site as we can. A mixture of large and small trees.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Kovacs?
Well, you stole my question about trees, but just out of curiosity, do you have any idea of what kind of businesses you're going to put into, or do you have any leads on businesses you're going to put into the Yellow House or the commercial space?
We've just talked at a high level to just a few local or regional type restaurant groups, breweries, coffee shops, those kind of things. This is one aspect of it that we haven't spent a lot of attention on yet in the marketplace due to, we've been trying to refine the architecturals of the large building. Just trying to figure out the right combination that both users can kind of complement each other. So we're going to start that process here shortly.
I do really like the outdoor open space that you have, and I like the idea of people being able to sit on porches and, well, the one with the cottages, but this I very much so love. But with the cottages, I like the idea of people being able to sit on porches and kind of look out and stuff like that. I do kind of echo the comment, I would hope there'd be a little bit larger of a porch just to be able to enjoy this, because it's a really neat aspect of it. All my questions have been answered. I do thank you for keeping the Yellow House. I think that's a great piece on this project.
Yeah, and for history, that was our old town attorney, Bob Blyce, his childhood home.
Commissioner Boone?
Thank you. A couple questions. I think your presentation, you had a slide in there that showed the number of feet from the post office and shopping centers. I think that's excellent information. And my other question is, if it's a two-bedroom townhouse, is it going to have a two-car garage? And if it's one bedroom, it's have a one-car garage?
No, the two bedrooms will have a one-car garage.
So everything will be one-car garages?
No, then the other, there's 3 stories that are the wider versions. They'll have 2-car garages. And then the 3 bedrooms on the green will have 2-car garages as well.
All righty, and I just want to echo what everybody else has kind of said, is the first time I saw this, the porches that look onto the green were much larger. And if you could do something to make those a little bit larger, that would be great.
Yes, it's hard to tell. Most of those units have 16-foot wide porches, and they're 11 feet deep. in a section, and then they wrap around another section. So they're a little bit deeper than what they show, and especially on the site plan, they don't show the larger porches. What we do is we try to variate our elevations to not have the same thing continuously, so that we have different depths and different massing on those units. And so love to have all big porches, but then it would just get monotonous a little bit. So we do switch it up. But we love big porches. If you look at most of our product, when we love to incorporate porches. So we're with you. It's a great spot to live outside.
And I like that you're a local builder also. Thank you.
Yeah, Joe's the owner. He started this, he's done a lot in this. He started about 8 years ago. So he started this thing.
Okay.
It's very humble. I'm Joe Roy, 18209 Morgan's View, Cornelius.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Phillips?
Buckle up, fellas. This is the weirdest group to see because I'm like, I know you. Okay, so I wanted to go back to trees. I know that you guys are having issues with the tree situation. Have you had an arborist come out and check out the trees on the property? Because if any of them, it's my belief that if any of them are sick or not going to make it, they should not count towards your tree save.
That's correct. And we have not had an arborist look at it. We need to do that. We've walked it. I've taken photographs of 7 of them that I believe are, they're either dying or they don't have much, they don't have a good full aesthetic value with the canopy.
So do you think that you guys would have that information before this comes?
Yes.
Okay, cool, because that's a huge factor, and I don't think it's fair to charge you for something that's out of your control. The trees, I will call them, in the parking lot, do those count towards your tree save?
No.
Or they don't, so you don't get credit for bringing those back in?
No.
Okay. And then this one is for Stephen. I've already asked this before, but what a weird time to be alive. I get to ask a question about TIA and Brian Hines. What triggered this to not be a TIA? Because I feel like it's really important that we understand these things when it comes to downtown, and why one project, not even 1/4 a mile's difference, and why?
Sure. So when you look at TIAs for development, they're site-specific. So you have to look at the conditions and what's being proposed for each site. So based on the initial determination, yes, it was over the town's threshold to require a TIA. When it moved to that next step, which is scoping, that's where you figure out what you have to study. The intersections that were over that threshold to study are actually within the state's US 21 at Gilead project, so they were excluded. And there were no other intersections that were required to be studied based on the ordinance, so therefore there was no TIA to complete. So it went through a couple of steps, but no TIA was required based on the town ordinance.
I have one final question. This goes back to trees for Emily. If they are required to pay into our tree save, can that money be specifically earmarked for parks, anything like that in the downtown area?
So as of right now, and I didn't go back and read every single line item in our ordinance, as of right now, and speaking with planning, we're not aware of anything that would allow that specifically as far as earmarking goes, but we can look further into that.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you all. We'll go ahead and close this public hearing for this evening. And we will now move to item 9D. And it is TA 22-02, zoning ordinance text amendment, removing the ability to exceed 30% attached houses. Mr. Semino.
Thank you, Mayor. Enter the staff report into the record. So this text amendment affects 4 different zoning districts: neighborhood residential, neighborhood center, town center, and highway commercial. The ordinance today reads subsection 3, in major subdivisions, keyword major, in major subdivisions, the aggregate number of dwelling units contained in attached houses, apartment buildings, and mixed-use buildings shall not exceed 30% of the total number of dwelling units in a project. So that's the standard. Then right underneath that, number 4, says notwithstanding the limitations of number 3 above, in any section of major subdivision located within a quarter mile of a designated rail transit station, the percentage of dwelling units contained in, and I underlined, attached houses, apartment buildings, and mixed-use buildings, so 3 types of buildings, is not limited. Higher overall density is encouraged within a quarter mile of a rail transit station. Rail transit stations are those locations designated by resolution adopted by the Board of Commissioners of the town of Huntersville. This is the section that the board is asked to be removed. Why? Because the rail is not coming anytime in our near future. So basically, when I got here in 2001, pretty much up to 2013, Norfolk Southern was at the table talking with Charlotte Area Rapid Transit about upgrading that line for commuter rail. And in 2013, the management changed in Norfolk Southern, and so they're saying we're not going to accommodate that. So that's why the board asked us to go ahead and process this. So that's the text amendment that we're taking forward. All the information that's on there about that and all the 2040 plan recommendations are in the staff report. We have included a definition of what the major subdivision is. So again, this applies to major subdivisions. In Huntersville, this was from the 2040 plan. There's 3 transit stations. So what I would like to do is just kind of show you kind of each site, each of the 3 sites, just so we can kind of put it in perspective. We're going to start from the north and work our way south with 3 stations. The first one is Sam First Station. What I did is this is the zoning map, and then I highlighted off to the left the districts that are affected by this. So these are the districts that if you're within a quarter mile of the transit station, in these 4 districts, you can exceed the 30% attached houses in a major subdivision. And so as you look at this, you'll see there's a lot of gray, which is corporate business, so that's not even residential. There is kind of the orange, which is right next to this transit station. That was rezoned to TND to have more than 30% attached, similar to rezoning requests we just heard. And then across the street, a good portion of these lots across the street are zoned neighborhood residential in TND. And the TND zoning is Caldwell Station, so that's already approved. And so some of these lots that are on the west side of 115 that are zoned NR could be affected by this. So that's what I wanted to just show you there. Moving down into the downtown area, you see the rail transit station designation there. The 4 different zones that are affected. There's neighborhood residential, which obviously is inside of our downtown. We also have town center, which is affected by this. Neighborhood center is kind of the bluish green. There isn't anything neighborhood center in Huntersville downtown, nor is there anything highway commercial. So that gives you a sense of what properties would be affected by this. Again, it's in only major subdivisions. And then the last one is at Hambright Station, which we'll call Brighton, but it was called Hambright Station. So that was rezoned back in 2005. You can see there's a little bit of highway commercial that is on the east side of Old Statesville Road, but that was part of the Brighton rezoning. So pretty much all the development is spoken for on the, I'll just say, on the east side of Old Statesville Road. Across the street, we have our schools. There are some small parcels that are zoned neighborhood residential that could be affected, but probably not because they're so small. So again, this not a big impact at Hambright Station, but downtown could involve some properties. So I want to finish up with this map right here. So this map kind of gives you a good snapshot of coming off of I-77 at exit 23, Gilead Road, and heading into downtown. And you'll see in white are projects that are approved but are not built yet. They're approved. The ones in yellow, Vermilion Village and North State. North State is on Gilead Road. Vermilion Village is on Huntersville Concord Road. Those projects were approved under this quarter mile within a transit station. So those projects were approved under that. Vermilion Front, on the other hand, was not, Vermillion Front was part of Vermillion that was approved back in the 1990s, so that's just part of that project. So just so you're aware of that. So again, these are two different major subdivisions that have been approved. The section of the ordinance that says that you can exceed 30% attached within a quarter mile of a rail transit station has been in the ordinance since 1996, had not been used until just recently, these two. And so staff is in favor of it. We do not believe that it's going to stymie development in our downtown. We do have, you will know me, I support residential in proximity to the downtown so we can support businesses. But we have a downtown steering committee that's working on a downtown plan. And so it would not surprise me that they address this issue. And their recommendation will be based on what we'll take to support businesses in the downtown. So that's going to happen before the end of this year. So, we have these two projects that are approved, Vermillion Village, North State, and Vermillion Front for that matter. It's going to take quite a bit of time before these things, I mean, we're going through permitting process now, but it's going to be years before this all built out. So we are comfortable with the text amendment for the reasons we stated in the staff report, and happy to answer any questions the town board has.
Board, we have about 5 people who've signed up to speak. Would you like to hear from them first, or would you like to ask questions? Hear from them first? Yes? Okay. So, Robert Kearns.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate that. Would like, before I get started, to dispel at least one rumor. My domestic partner is not responsible for injury in any way.
I'm glad to hear that.
Although I was training for the Loch Norman Games, and Caber got off askew. So.
Mr. Kearns, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thanks for this opportunity to speak on TA 2202. I am Robert Kearns of 301 Hillcrest Drive in Greenfield Park. And we've been talking about a lot of these things for a very long time now. Go back to 1996, as Jack was saying. But the TOD, seriously, every time someone speaks of the rail transit station in Huntersville, they lose a little bit of credibility. They disrespect both their audience and themselves, because we all know there's no light rail coming, and we've known it for quite some time. Now, I was initially a fan of this. I like the scheme. The concept is good. I'm a fan of new urbanism, satellite village concept, these things going back to 96 or so. However, you have to admit, we've never had the support of all 4 North Mecklenburg towns for rail. If one town votes for it, 2 others vote against it. Even our previous mayor was not really in support of the rail, certainly not for taxes paying for it. Although I think he was willing to use it as a lever to subvert existing zoning, and I got a little heartburn over that. Now, Norfolk Southern has always been a problem. They could always veto the project, and in fact, they now have. TOD now seems like a ruse for developers to get the highest possible density in any given area, especially in our downtown area. The acronym TOD really ought to stand now for total overdevelopment, I think. We've gotten all out of whack here. We need to plan intentionally for a sustainable future for our town. Really happy about the new downtown steering committee, and I wish them the best. But we need to concentrate on improving the quality of life for residents of Huntersville and not just sell out for more. More is not always better. Where, for instance, are the improvements for our inadequate and crumbling infrastructure? Where's the downtown park and nature area which most exceptional cities embrace? Where's our pedestrian mall and our walkable, bikeable center city? While I sincerely appreciate the nascent effort of the Downtown Steering Committee, what have we actually accomplished toward these goals in the last 2 decades? Mostly what I've seen is deforestation, gridlock, exploding population, and a useless toll road. I really think we can do better. So please vote for the text amendment to modify this TOD. Hey, it's a start. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kearns. Mr. Kemper?
Thank you for your time. My name is Brad Kemper. I live at 205 Providence Lane, Huntersville, North Carolina. My family has been here since '87. My wife's family's been here since human race was existed. But I want to just say that very quickly, I have this long list of things to say, but I'm just going to say this, that we're losing our charm when it comes to when I bring my children downtown. It's just going to be a lot of high-rise buildings with apartments, and I feel like we're being owned by this developer that's going to be right next to Discovery Place Kids. While I was very impressed with the last development group, it showed a lot of charm, preserved our historical homes, and it's somewhere I would like to actually take my kids, depending on what the restaurants are. In fact, I actually work for an international company, and I like to actually bring some of these people from Norway, Prague, all these places to my area. Before COVID, I would have tours of the Sherwood Forest neighborhood, and I would take them down the old streets. I would kind of hide them against Ginyard's dirty buildings over there, but for the most part, they love this area. And now I'm getting to the point to where if I have people come to visit us now, do I really want to really take them through the downtown city when we start getting these high rises of high development growth areas that don't have any charm for my kids to run around, go to these stores, go to activities? I think we're overpopulating ourselves with high development homes, and I would like to have the charm back in Huntersville as much as we could. I don't think we can get it all back because I think we're owned by this one development group, but that's all I would say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lee? You take your time. We're not going anywhere.
I just had an operation Tuesday, so it went in my heart and all that stuff. Commissioner, Madam Mayor and Commissioners, I am Ernie Lee, and I live at 302 Watkins Street in Huntersville. I do have a wood yard business up in Huntersville, and I appreciate that opportunity to allow me to have a business. My wife and I, we've been here 56 years, and we are still struggling. But anyhow, I come today asking you as commissioners, let's see if we can stay with the 2040 plan. It's been on the books for a long, long time, and a lot of people look forward to this. And I'll tell you why. I'm a businessman, and I got some properties downtown right there next to American Legion. You know, a lot of people have invested their money to buy property. And why do they buy property? A lot of them, like me, white-headed, getting wrinkly, and a little bit older, but they got to go to a nursing home. So now they have a great opportunity to sell their property. But if the commissioners allow it not to be sold, and they can't get their money for what they thought they would get down the road, they're not going to have the money to put into their nursing homes. Now, we have hurt them because they were counting on to get that money to have a better quality of life. You know, as you get up age, you know, life struggles. And you guys are struggling because you got to make a decision what you're going to do for the big town of Huntersville. Now, don't get me wrong. I was against that little episode going in my neighborhood. I sat on that front porch and I could see those trees out there, and I enjoyed those trees for years and years. But then I had to realize that, you know, there's just more than just the trees. It was something that the town, they had to, it's going to be money coming in for you guys. It's going to be taxes. And I know that's what you got to be thinking about, because we all got to have the money for taxes to be able to pay the episode that's coming our way. And that is a great responsibility. So I ask you today to take all this in consideration, what Brian and Jay is doing down here at those apartments, those cottage things. That's great. Because that's an opportunity for people to walk downtown. And that's what it's all about. If we don't do something about the town, we're going to become stagnated. So if you don't have no houses, no apartments, and you gotta have a certain amount of apartments, so I hope that y'all will kind of look at it and say, well, maybe we don't need all these, but we need a certain amount. Because we need the people to come downtown to enjoy what we got. But if we're not gonna show them what we got, keep them away. Hey, I'm gonna tell you something. 56 years ago, and some of these guys here might remember, we had one Tasty Freeze. Do you remember that? One Tasty Freeze, we could get some good chicken. And where's it at today? It's gone. But where did I have to go? I had to go all the way to Charlotte, the Herford Barn. You remember them days? To get me a nice big steak. But thank God we got those buildings now. I can just go over at Burkdale. Well, why do I gotta go to Burkdale when I live here? Why can't I just live over there at 302 Watson Street and I can just walk down, enjoy some of this down here that we're trying to get? So I ask you today, heavy-heartedly, take care of the 2040. It's been on the books too long, and people look forward to it. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Holman?
Hello again.
Name and address?
Lee Holman, 100 Cambridge Road.
Thank you.
Let's see. I know there's been a few meetings held by developer interest and select board members on the subject, which is completely acceptable, and I'm writing to ensure you hear the residents' side of this issue. As you know, I started this conversation with Nate Bowman about a month ago. We decided that we needed Jack Semino's expertise, and I invited Jay Henson to come too. We ran a couple project scenarios by Jack for a before and after TOD removal view to see how this would affect some of the ideas they had on land use. One that Nate presented touched on the Vermilion overlay, so that project was going to be allowed as an extension of Vermilion. The other example was 9 properties between 2nd and Church Street that was modeled with 18 townhomes. You've probably seen this one, and with the rail transit bonus removed, this would not be allowed. My understanding is that another scenario was subsequently presented, a subtly different example of the hypothetical Church Street 18 townhome project. The suggestion is that if the TOD is removed and the 18 townhomes are no longer an option, a developer could come in and redraw the lot lines on these 2 parcels and make 2 distinct lots, allowing the developer by right to build 2 apartment buildings. I ran this by Jack, and the answer is no, probably not. If there is an apparent attempt to skirt subdivision ordinances, which this would, then that would not be allowed. Removing the TOD has nothing to do with by right land use. So the tactic being used, if you pull TOD, we can do something even more high density, is not valid. If you can do it then by right, then you can do it now by right. I've also heard, but the town might get sued. No, again, this deals only with major subdivisions, and those, as you know, are not by right. In the same Church Street project with TOD, a developer would be able to construct 9 duplexes by right. 9 duplexes, 18 door fronts, 18 townhomes, 18 door fronts. What are we missing? If not good enough for said developer, he can petition for conditional zoning, TND. The town has more say in that regard and can go ahead and allow the higher density model. This would encourage vertical mixed-use development. And since of all the housing types built and approved in downtown, we only have 1 true mixed-use coming. We might just get the one thing we all agree is needed, more commercial space. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Amy Holman?
Amy Hallman, 100 Cambridge Road. This is the last time, I promise, today. As our mayor said last week in retreat, we have a responsibility to leave this town in better shape than when we got here. Shook Kelly presented an economic development a few weeks ago, and for those of you that don't know, they assessed in our downtown that we could already support 70,000 square feet of commercial and retail right now, without new construction. We've already approved almost 700 new residential rooftops within a quarter mile of town center. The kicker to me was when they presented styles and types of buildings that do not have what they call the X factor. These would be the facades that they highly recommend against having. And they look just like the apartment buildings that are coming on Gilead. I don't want them in downtown, and I don't want them in Caldwell Station. For 2 years, my friends and neighbors have been waiting to talk about this TOD ordinance. Every time we seem to make headway on this topic, someone in Charlotte says, well, we're open to discussing it. And then we all start looking like Jim Carrey's Lloyd Christmas and Dumb and Dumber, gushing, so you're telling me there's a chance? The train in question is in this elusive transit station, is a commuter rail, a heavy diesel engine, energy-intensive passenger train, which would only come through 10 times a day at most. This is no light rail. And if we were going to build the light rail, it would take billions of dollars to build new tracks for the light rail. Anyone using the parcel of land at 105 Maxwell as an example of what could not happen with the TOD is trying to lure you in. The town bought that property for a reason. You're going to control it. Surely you're not planning on residential development there yourself. So let that example go. Anyone who uses the Bellamore Apartments across from Primal Brewery as an example comparable is conflating the two purposefully. The lot on which Bellamore was built was over 5 acres, always. It was one lot, always, not pieced together. Anyone using these tactics has their hand in the cookie jar and doesn't want to stop eating all the cookies. The minor cookies, the major cookies, all the cookies as you'll allow. The TOD ordinance is bad for Huntersville at this time and point, is as bad as anyone allowing you to eat all the cookies in the cookie jar. With the TOD mindset, developers don't have to bring you their best plans. By right, they will bring you the budget-friendly, blander, store-brand cookies. You know the kind, as many as the bag will hold for practically nothing. You'll eat them if that's all you have. And if they're already selling, why upgrade? At least make them bring you the Pepperidge Farm. Where the heck's Miss Fields? Dare to dream, people. Why wouldn't you want to require the boutique-style small business cookies? You know, the ones that we all crave for parties and gifts. Remove the TOD ordinance. If the train miraculously reappears, you can put it back if you want to. Be a good steward of that cookie jar control. Do it for the health of the town. As a bonus, you may just get some of those homemade babies in the mix too.
Thank you, Ms. Holman. So I will open it up for discussion. Commissioner Phillips?
I'm so sorry, Jack. I have so many questions.
That's fine.
Okay, first is, can we remove TOD from one specific area of town, or is that spot zoning?
So, just so we're clear, this text amendment is not for one specific area of town. This text amendment is for these 4 districts.
I'm aware.
Yes.
Yes, but could we do the opposite, where we allow this zoning for, let's say, Brighton and Sanford, but then we exclude downtown?
So in the case of Brighton, they've already got a TOD zoning, so they have a vested right to do it, so they're not going to be coming back to you. In the case of Sam Fur, they actually rezoned their property to TND to get their 100% attached. So they were not looking at a transit-oriented district zoning district. They were looking for a TND similar to what we had earlier tonight next to the post office and next to the school. So that they don't need a TOD zoning. They've got a traditional neighborhood development. So those 2 areas kind of are out of play, so to speak. I will say there is, on the Sanford area, there are some properties on the west side of 115 that are zoned neighborhood residential that will be caught up in this. You couldn't treat neighborhood residential district different depending on where its location. It's got to be across the board, wherever that zone is or these 4 zones are, it's going to be across the board. Couldn't pinpoint it.
Okay. How long have we had this zoning, and when was the last time it was modified?
Right. So we've had it in the ordinance since 1996. A couple words have been changed from 96 up till now, but only the 2 projects that I showed have taken advantage of that, and that's Vermillion Village. That was approved in 2017 initially, and then modified in 2021. And then North State, which was also approved in 2021. I
know this is probably way out of your scope, so whoever can jump in. will this impact the market value of properties in the area? And I don't know if this is a question for staff. We have someone that is an expert in this field weigh in. They could use the properties the town owns that would be impacted, maybe to do a comparison of the market price?
It's been my experience that when we make code changes like this, that it hasn't had a big effect. What affects the property values is what people sell it for, and that just takes time, so, and then it gets reappraised based on what that sale is, and that just takes an amount of time. I know I can't answer that question because I'm not an appraiser, but I will just leave it at that, and if you want to ask me more, I'll try to give it a go.
Were notices sent to the public about this public hearing? And if so, how was the information disseminated?
Right, so we go with the legal ads per the ordinance, per the statute as well. So we put legal ads in the paper. The town board announced they were calling a public hearing last month for today. So we do that as well. We have a mailing list of some 400-odd people that ask for copies of our agendas so they know what's going on, so they've got that as well. It's on the website. So that's the method that we use to get the word out.
Okay, can we specify this down to train and rail specific and then keep the buses or any other form of transportation?
So this particular section that we're put the X mark on, it only applies to rail. Because it says rail transit stations are where you can exceed that 30%. So to try to answer the question with bus, we do have a transit-oriented district, TOD, actual district, that can apply to rail or bus. And so Brighton was the first one that used the TOD zoning, but that was in '06 when Norfolk Southern was at the table, and it looked like that was, they were working together. Since 2013, Norfolk Southern's walked away. In the interim, up at Sam Fur, they came to staff and said, well, we're looking to do this project. What zones would we choose? We specifically said avoid TOD, because Norfolk Southern's walked away. It doesn't make any sense for somebody to ask for TOD. And the TOD zoning, by the way, has a minimum of 18 units an acre, and then you go up from there. So that has a floor. You go more dense. So we've and no one has asked for that. We've guided developers who've talked to us away from that TOD zoning. It's up to them whether but nobody's really submitted that way. But for bus, it is available, and in fact, we had one that was approved where on Hambright Road, where there is going to be a bus rapid transit area, there was a TOD zoning approved for that for apartments because there was bus rapid transit within a quarter mile.
I'm almost on a promise. Have we gotten an opinion from the Lake Norman Chamber, the EDC, Visit Lake Norman, the Huntersville Chamber on potential impacts to the businesses in the area?
No, we have not. We've done the advertisements that we need to do. I would simply offer, if you looked at the map that we showed, and we included in your agenda packet, there's a number of projects that are approved in this downtown area that's going to bring homes to our area. And so, those, we fully believe, and it's going to help support businesses. So we're moving in the right direction. It's just this section is going to be putting us on hold for major subdivisions to exceed it, but still, people can do just what we heard earlier today. They could ask for a TND zoning if they can make the argument to you. Here's my project. What do you think? And so that's an option that's still open. So it's not closing the door completely. It's just you got to try a different method to go forward.
And then I have two more. I'm so sorry. Okay. Have you guys ever had a zoning come in, change it, and then revert it back in the history of the town?
I've been here 20 years, and I'm sure that it has happened on occasion where somebody's zoned property and then they've taken it back. One I can think of that happened just a couple meetings ago was out on Beatty's Ford Road, where they had it zoned TR, and then they asked for it to go back to R. That was, but those are the exceptions rather than the rule. And in that case, it was lower density. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And then my final thing, and it's more so, could you just speak on it, and it's not a comment or a question. There's been some confusion with people who believe that if we do this, it will somehow impact or get rid of upcoming projects like North State. And could you explain to people like how that is not possible?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So what you see in white are approved projects: Vermillion Village, North State, and Vermillion Front. Now, again, Vermillion Front was approved under the original Vermillion rezoning in the 1990s. But these projects are legally vested, meaning they can proceed on. They are approved, and when they are approved, that kind of sets the standard for that time. So you can't go back and take those rights away from those developments, okay?
All your questions? Yes. I will open it up for other questions. Commissioner Kovacs.
So I just want to clarify something you said. If we remove TOD, we're not stopping building that's happening around there. There's still the opportunity for developers to come and request TND to still get these developments there. It just doesn't allow them to automatically have this unlimited, unbridled development, correct?
Right, so the way I would word it is, it just doesn't let them go through, use this section of the ordinance to do it, but there's other ways to do it, and there's a lot of other uses that are allowed. So absolutely, yes, development can and will occur, and we had one on our agenda tonight of a new project of commercial, residential, TND, so I think that is proof on your agenda.
Any other questions? Commissioner Munger?
Can't let a topic go untouched. I'm looking at staff comments on LU 11 and DT 2. If TA 2202 is approved, allowing more than 30% attached houses, apartment buildings and mixed-use buildings could occur through a rezoning, providing a higher level review by the town than would occur with a by right land use. Can you just kind of give me a context? Probably not understanding it.
Yeah, just so again, I'm going to go back to the case that we just had come before you.
Yep.
They were offering up architecture, buildings. This is where my garage is going to be. This is where my open space is going to be. We would like to see more porches, bigger porches. That is a perfect example when you go through conditional district rezoning, the level of detail that can be discussed and talked about. I will simply say conditional district rezonings have to be what the applicant agrees to and the board agrees to. So there has to be mutual agreement, but that illustrates the level of detail that the board can get into through that conditional district rezoning process.
Okay. And so based on my reading of the stricken and remaining language in section 232.5D4, by passing this, we would be removing the no limit on percentage of dwelling units in attached housing and leaving a 45% cap in place. Is that correct?
Correct. Let me be sure. I'm going to go to the actual language. Okay, could you ask that again? I just want to be sure I capture the right subsection.
So it's section 2.3.2.5D4. So it's that middle part right there.
Yeah, so Article 3.2.5
D4, yeah.
Yes, right. So only the strike-through section is being removed. So what will the ordinance would read if this amendment is approved is notwithstanding limitation 3 above, the percentage of dwelling units contained in attached houses, apartment buildings, and mixed-use buildings is not limited when the dwellings are part of a mixed-use office and/or commercial residential district and projected to provide no more than 45% of the habitable floor area within a planned development project for residential use. So that's going to stay. Yep. So that's another bit of flexibility that will not change with this text amendment.
Okay. Last question I have is, we've spoken a couple times about a previous project that was presented here tonight. Is there a particular way that this would potentially adversely affect that particular application, or would they have alternative routes such as a TND to have a larger amount of attached housing still available to them?
So if somebody wanted to, had a major subdivision and they wanted to exceed 30% attached or apartments or mixed-use buildings, there is a TND option that's available to rezone to. I will say that it is context-related. So, you know, it's got to be in an area where it meets the intent of the TND. What we heard earlier today is that this project that was presented earlier, it's walk to a school, it's walk to the post office, there's shopping, there's to downtown, so it kind of fits that context. So as long as, you know, it kind of fits that context and is not violate some other law such as spot zoning, then yes, that's an option that's available.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boone?
Yes, Jack, just one quick question. When's the last time you talked to the railroad? North Fork Southern?
They don't talk to me. They go to the mayor. So well, it is at Charlotte Area Transit discussion levels. So now if you're talking to our engineering department, they talk to them on a regular basis about just crossing. But you're asking in terms of rail transit, and that is handled through CAT. So I'm just not a part of it.
Mr. Roberts, could you add a date the last time you might have talked to him?
I'll just be specific to your question. The answer is I have not talked to the rail division.
Madam Mayor?
I have not either.
Thank you.
Mr. Gammon? Of course you may. I went blank for just a moment. I apologize.
Frank Gammon, Planning Board. I have two questions. One is, what was the vote at the Ordinance Advisory Board for this TA?
It's coming up Thursday, so, yeah, so that's Thursday. That's
Okay,
when that group.
No, we just passed this one. The Ordinance Advisory Board, not the Planning Board.
I believe it was 8-0.
7-1.
My apologies.
We discussed this on the 3rd.
No, this is coming up.
Not for the Planning Board. For
The Ordinance Advisory Board met March 3rd.
Sorry, Judge.
I did get confused.
I get confused too.
Ordinances Advisory Board did recommend approval of this unanimous.
Yeah, 9-0. Well, 8-0, one person was absent. The second question, I may be asking Commissioner Munger's question a different way, but if this TA 2202, were in effect when North State and the applicable Vermillion project were approved, how would that have impacted the density? As the current ordinance allowed them to have unlimited density, how would this text amendment have impacted it or changed that? Thank you, that's all.
So just to be clear, that those projects could have asked for a TND zoning to do exactly what they're approved to do.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, I have a comment.
Please.
Instead of closing this public hearing tonight, we would like to leave it open for a minimum of 30 days to include that all questions are answered, all comments are brought in, and that Commissioner Kidwell, who is not here, and this was an item he put on the agenda, can be handled too.
Leave that to the board.
I would second that if that were a motion.
Is that a motion?
Motion to keep the public hearing open for 30 days to ensure that we are getting proper information to make sure all 6 town board members have their say in this matter.
And I have a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Boone?
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, this is going before the planning board tomorrow?
It's going next week.
Next, at the end of the month. So if we put a 30-day open on this, would that affect the planning board's decision on this?
It would affect the planning board's decision.
Well,
Is that my question?
just to be clear, I'll let Emily jump in. It is not a law that the public hearing be closed before the planning board makes a recommendation. It's the way it's always worked, but it's not a requirement. Now, if you, and just to be clear, as I'm understanding, it said 30 days, but I need to clarify, is the intent to keep the public hearing open till your first meeting in April, which will be April the 4th? So that night it's on the agenda. Would that be what the intent is keep it open till April the 4th meeting, town board meeting?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay, so I think that makes it clear to us, the public hearing, instead of the 30 days. I didn't count that 30 days, but if we could say April the 4th, that would be good. But it would, getting back to the question though, is it is not required that the public hearing be closed before a planning board recommendation, but typically that is, well, that's what's done. So Emily, did you want to add anything to that?
That's correct. It's not a law. Typically in Huntersville, we do wait though, so that the planning board has the benefit of hearing exactly what was said during the joint public hearing before making their recommendation. So the town board could opt to allow it to move forward, or they could also hold the public hearing open, allow it to close, and then have it go to the planning board.
So Commissioner Phillips, would you amend your motion?
Amend motion that we keep this open until April 4th, 2022.
Second again.
All right, and additional discussion, Commissioner Kovacs.
So then when will we vote on it?
So right now it is scheduled for April the 18th. So that is your.
So could we still vote that day if we keep the public hearing open?
Yeah, that would be 2 weeks. So you'll close the public hearing on the 4th. And then 2 weeks later, you'll actually make a decision, assuming you're comfortable with having the planning board make their recommendation, which would be on Tuesday, March 22nd. Now, do understand the planning board can continue an item as well. So that would kind of hold up the whole decision-making process. So I just lay that out there for discussion.
Thank you.
Any additional conversation? Commissioner Boone?
So I just want to understand this, that every time there's a commissioner, that we have a public hearing and a commissioner is absent, we're going to delay it to the next meeting?
I would say in this situation, why he's not here is absolutely acceptable. And the fact that his name, when this got put on the agenda initially, was right beside the item, not on this, but when it got brought up the first time, it was Commissioner Kidwell and Commissioner Kovacs. And I personally feel like we shouldn't be closing this without his say. He can't help that he's not here right now. And I feel like the people who put it on the agenda should both have an equal say.
I understand that, but I just want to be sure that we're not setting this for the record for future times, that if we don't have all 6 commissioners, we can't delay the closing of the public hearing. This is a one-time deal.
Well, hopefully.
Well, I just want to be sure.
Any other discussion? So we,
I would like to make a motion to keep the public hearing open until April 4th, 2022.
we have a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, we will leave this public hearing open until April the 4th. Since there is no other business, we will now move to mayor and commissioner reports. And I will
wait, you
go
can't
ahead
leave.
and we will let Commissioner Boone, would you mind going first this evening?
Sure, I don't mind. I really don't have anything from the fire department or the power folks, but on April 2nd, we will have a festival of service in Huntington Green neighborhood, but more details will be at our next board meeting. But I've taken a page out of what my other commissioners have been doing in their reports of what they have been doing around the community. And I would just like to make a list of things that have happened that I've been involved in since the last meeting. Frank Gamer and I participating in a mentoring session with one of the new planning board members to kind of bring them up to speed on motions and how the planning board works. I've met with Sally Ashworth from Visit Lake Norman to see if we could get some some tax dollars for a walking app. Commissioner Pardee and I met with Chief Hoyle and Major Graham, attended the Cool Kids Clubhouse open house, met with Tracy Pickard she's the principal of Hopewell High School, to follow up on her meeting that they had at the church and what the retirement community is going to do for Hopewell High School. Attended a planning board meeting, made a visit to the Public Works Building, attended 2 Old Huntersville Historic Society meeting. Also, Commissioner Partee and myself met with the Ada Jenkins and Caterpillar Ministries to discuss the Festival of Services, and I attended the Mayor's Kickoff Challenge.
Well done. Commissioner Kovacs?
I have tonight's update from the Huntersville Chamber. The March Lunch and Learn will be at Stop Restoration March 10th from 11 to 1:30. They ask you to please RSVP just for appropriate food count. The March member meeting will be on Tuesday, March 15th from 11 to 1 at Ninja Nation. So if you're a member, please join and have some fun and just RSVP again for appropriate count. And please mark your calendars for Saturday, March 19th for Angels of 97 Festival fundraiser at Veterans Park from 11 to 5 with live music, food trucks, vendors, and kids' activities. Lake Norman Chamber update. Tomorrow, Tuesday, March 8th from 8:30 to 10 is the Lake Norman Chamber female networking event at Brick Row in Cornelius. Friday, March 18th is Focus Friday. The president of AT&T North Carolina will be speaking about the direction of telecommunications and data privacy. The Chamber will be hosting a quarterly meeting of nonprofits on Tuesday, March 22nd at Carolina Custom in Cornelius at 10 a.m. And there are other networking events available if you just go to lakenormanchamber.org. And as part of my closing comments, I would just like to say happy anniversary to my husband. Sorry, I was with my friends and not you, but I love you and I'll see you soon.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioner Kovacs. Yes, congratulations. Commissioner Phillips?
I don't have an update, except I want to thank Helen from the Loch Norman Games and Jessica from Rural Hill for coming out and giving such an awesome update. And that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Commissioner Partee?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, town staff, residents that are still viewing and on social media. My report activities for the past week is as follows. On Tuesday, February 22nd, I was invited to attend the second-year anniversary reception at Cool Kids Clubhouse in honor of Dan Jensen. Also in attendance was Commissioner Amber Kovacs. Cool Kids Clubhouse their mission is devoted to improving the quality of life for pediatric cancer patients. You can go to their website, donate, or volunteer. On Monday, February 28th, and to March, where we had the town board budget and planning retreat here in Town Hall Rotunda. Sessions were live streamed and recorded for the public view. As always, I'm going to push gun safety for those households where children are living. Accidental discharges can cause serious physical injury and death. Huntersville Police Department has free gun safety locks. Organizations and individuals can contact me by sending an email to dprt@huntersville.org. Let's be child safe. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Munger.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Huntersville Ordinance Advisory Board meeting was held on March 3rd, and many of the topics were covered in tonight's meeting already. I attended the MEAC, Municipal Educational Advisory Committee meeting last Wednesday, where I once again requested when the rubric will be made available to the various towns. I was told that it would first be made available to the CMS board, which will be voting on it next month, and then it will be made available to the towns thereafter. So in theory, we'll see it soon. The Public Arts Commission will meet on Wednesday, March 9th, to discuss the title/focus, discuss changing the title/focus to Arts and Cultural Commission versus Public Art Commission, and to discuss Sculpture Tour 2023. And last but not least, as always, if you have the opportunity to give, please consider supporting our local nonprofits. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Munger. I will end the evening with my report. At the MTC, they gave us a status on the Envision My Ride efforts. And basically, through the Envision My Ride efforts, CATS has sought to redesign the bus network and improve the customer experience. They're stating that this will be achieved by developing recommendations in 3 main areas: the network structure, route frequency, and service reliability. I am sure that we will continue to work to try to make sure that our transit system in Huntersville, as we are connected with all of the towns, that it's a more robust transit service. At least that's what I'm looking for out of working with MTC and CATS. In regards to the EDC, currently, Huntersville has 20 projects out of their total 37. So lots of things are happening and projects are moving at the EDC. I'd also like to share with you that we hosted the Journey 360 project last Friday. And Journey 360 is a program where we took students from all 3 area high schools. We had 22 from North, 20 from Hopewell, and 11 from Huff. And we took them, each went, they rotated 3 businesses. They went and toured Pester, Polytech, and Kerrs. I was with the Hopewell group, and then we all convened together at CPCC, the Maracas campus, where they took a tour of the automotive program, and then they had an opportunity to sit down, eat pizza and a salad, and hear and connect with counselors from CPCC. These students were students that were not necessarily interested in going to college, but they had an incredible experience touring these sites. I heard one student leaned over to his buddy and say, "This is much cooler than I thought it was going to be." And I think that's high praise from a 16-year-old, 17-year-old. So it was an opportunity for those businesses to also engage with the students and with the facilitators from the schools as well. Their CTE coordinators, and some cross-curriculum teachers as well. And I hope that we'll continue to do that. It seemed very successful, and I look forward to getting the remarks back from those students. And I believe a student was actually offered a job at one of the businesses while they were en route, or at least encouraged to come interview. How about that? I'll leave it there. Last thing, I would like to incur a couple of things. Actually, I still have a couple more here. Probably should put the glasses on. I attended a ribbon cutting at Apricot Lane in Birkdale over the weekend on Friday, and I will tell you that was wonderful to see. With it, Women's History Month, having a mother-daughter team opening a business in Birkdale was wonderful to see. And so I would highly encourage you to go check them out. They've got a lot of great stuff in their store. For the board's update, I did have an opportunity to connect with Colonial Pipeline. They would like to host the board yet again to come out and tour where they currently are. And like I explained to them, I think that probably is a good idea. We haven't been out there since August. That being said, I also think that it is important for our community to hear from Colonial Pipeline, and I will continue to encourage them to come to this board meeting. And I believe that we'll have some conversations with NCDEQ to get them to hopefully do a joint meeting. So we'll hopefully hear from both of them. At least that's what I'm pushing for. Last but not least, we hosted Huntersville 101. First week, this past week, and the residents, as usual, are very engaged and very excited, and I look forward to them as they go through Huntersville 101. Ms. Strickland, you're doing a great job. All the comments that I have been getting have just been thumbs up, double thumbs up for all the work and effort. And that's just one class. So I am sure that they will truly enjoy that. And with that, my closing comments are continue to enjoy our beautiful weather while we have it. Commissioner Boone,
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
can I finish my closing comments first? Please?
Okay.
Thank you. I just want to encourage our citizens to come out and participate, as it's nice, the weather. Come out and participate in the Mayor's Fitness Challenge. We kicked that off yesterday in North Mac Park. I would encourage you to get online, log in, create that login, and count those minutes. We are competing against Cornelius and Davidson, and I would love to be able to sit that trophy right here for all of Huntersville to enjoy, and get out there and just walk, even if it's 5 minutes, if it's 150 minutes. Get out there and move and enjoy the spring weather. With that, Mr. Boone, would you like to make a motion?
I would. I'd like to make a motion to go into closed session.
We have a motion to go into closed session.
Pursuant of NCGS 143-318, 11A3, to give instructions on the North Carolina Utilities Commission, docket number ES-165, sub 0, in the matter of the petition of Reynolds Consumer Products, Inc., for a reassignment of electrical service territory.
There's a motion to go into closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor to go into closed session? Any opposed? Seeing none, this board will be going into closed session.